Well, there are concerns about the rise in anti-Semitism in light of the weekend attack in Australia. Jamie Michaels from the UOC joining us this morning. Jamie, thanks for taking time for us today. And I guess let's just start with what we know about whether anti-Semitic sentiment is on the rise and what it looks like.
Jefferson, thanks so much for having me here. Anti-Semitism in Canada is skyrocketing. And I think we really need to treat this as an emergency. Canadian Jews are 25 times more likely than other Canadians to be the recipient of a hate crime. And it's really seeping into every corner of public life in this country. That's been true for decades in Canada. The Jews have been the minority group most likely to be targeted by a hate crime, and now this crisis is really feeling acute.
Yeah, and we were talking off camera. You were mentioning that obviously this occurred in the situation at Bondi Beach occurred in a Commonwealth country, as Canada is. Why are you drawing a parallel there in terms of this should be a wake-up call to raise our awareness here?
I think we can see a similar trajectory in terms of warning signs. This attack didn't happen in a vacuum here. You had these chants at the Sydney Opera House 2 years ago, huge crowds chanting to gas the Jews. You see a rise in attacks, you see a firebombing of a synagogue, you see anti-Semitic graffiti starting to fill the streets, and really going unanswered beyond the level of sentiment. So what we really need to see is both legislation coupled with enforcement, and to treat this as an emergency. We shouldn't be surprised by this attack. We should be horrified by it, but we should really see the writing on the wall, both literally and figuratively, and be addressing these hateful sentiments as they percolate, not only as they become acute in a crisis that costs human lives.
And Jamie, when we look broadly at discrimination against different groups, what makes anti-Semitism unique?
You know, I've heard it said that anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. And I think it manifests itself in a way that is unlike other hatreds. If I had to boil it down to its base essence, anti-Semitism is conspiratorial. There's these conspiracies of Jewish power and Jewish control that puts the Jew in this strange position where they're both above and below other members in the society. And I think this takes the form of whatever society resents at the time, anti-Semitism will take that form. If you're looking at these manifestations in a capitalist society, Jews are communists. If it's a communist society, Jews are capitalists. So wherever a society is trying to identify itself, Jews will take the other role of the other and the enemy in that society.
How does education play into this, and what sort of needs to happen to maybe change some of these narratives?
I think on the education front, what we need to do is first move beyond this Holocaust-only lens of anti-Semitism, as though anti-Semitism only happened in Germany from 1939 to 1945, and then evaporated and everyone lived happily ever after. Jews in Canada are in a crisis. The statistics speak for themselves, and yet Jews often find themselves excluded from educational movements that often are meant in good faith to foster this sense of inclusion and this sense of tolerance. But we don't really see this in Jewish education for other groups. You know, we've got this framing that has been boiled down to acronyms. And I think in those acronyms, it's hard to see Jews as a minority group in crisis. So we need to see more education about Jewish life. We need to see more education about the contemporary crisis of anti-Semitism. And also, I think in a very human sense, we need to know Jews in our communities.
Okay, we'll continue to follow it. Jamie, thank you so much for your insight this morning. Very much appreciate it. That is Jamie Michaels from the University of Calgary.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.